Welcome to episode 13 of the Sensitive Soul Support Podcast. Good morning, Jen.
Good morning.
How are you doing? How's your week going?
Good. Feeling really good, actually.
Yeah, I have to say, you're in a really good space this week. I could tell from a few of the messages we've left back and forth this week that your energy's like, you're so grounded and so clear. So it's really cool to see you in that space. And I had a week where I was like really in the funk and in the shadows and really dark the beginning of this week. So yeah, amazing to hear from you. Just such clarity, and your energy was just really clear this week. So
yeah, I felt a huge shift for sure.
Yeah.
I always feel a shift this time of year in bulk. I know for those of you that don't know what in bulk is, it's the halfway point between spring and winter. And I feel like that buzz in the air. I feel that like things are waking up underground and starting to get to work, and that inspires me and motivates me, and just that little shift. It makes such a difference in my energy level.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm starting to feel a little bit of that. Like, I think the days are getting like slightly longer, and in the morning it's not as dark. And for a lot of empaths, we're very much affected by the weather, the season, the sunlight, the rain. I mean, it's really incredible. I have a friend who lives in Washington, and it's really tough for her as an empath because it's always gray and rainy there. So yeah, we are very connected to the seasons, you especially. So I'm excited to get to the place where you are, where I'm starting to really feel the excitement and buzz of spring coming. So hopefully that's coming next week. This is a shadowy week for me. So today we're going to talk a little bit about reconnecting with our listeners after we've had a chance to share our stories. So for those of you listening, on our last episode, we shared our story about how we met through being co-authors in a collection of women's stories. And we shared a little bit about the commonality between our stories, which was that we both kind of hit rock bottom as moms, as highly sensitives and empaths. And we had an opportunity to read to you all our stories in our Facebook group. So if you're not in our Facebook group and you'd like to be, you can find us at Sensitive Soul Support on Facebook. And that's a group that we have for our listeners. And if you want to catch up and listen to those stories, you can. But I want to reconnect some of the dots from what we talked about, last week. And we were going to talk more about mom guilt. We had talked about spending some time on that. So last week I shared about one of the most painful memories that I have when my kids were really young, being completely overwhelmed by my day, all the things I had to do. And they were really young, so they weren't, very mature at that point. And I remember just, again, sitting on that floor upstairs in front of the laundry room, and I had, like, Jake was crying in one room and Emma was, just either crying or just hyper or something going on in her other room. And I just felt in that moment like, I can't take this. I flipped out. So I flipped my lid, and I was crying and screaming, and I felt terrible afterwards, because I realized, looking back on that, how scary that must have been for my kids to see their mom sitting on the floor, screaming and crying and like a lunatic. I felt like I was in that place where I legit was like a lunatic. I was offline, and everything was hitting me from the day and all the things I was worrying about. And if anyone heard my story, it's a lot about perfectionism. That's a shadow for HSPs. It's one of our most common shadows, is feeling like we have to do things so perfectly. And I think that was like the height of me as a mom, realizing like, I can't get it all done. I can't do all the things. I can't control my kids. I can't get peace. I still have laundry. I just remember that immense overwhelm that I couldn't get ahead of my life. I didn't feel in control of things. And as HSPs, with knowing that we have this shadow of perfectionism that can come up and kind of paralyze us now and then, or keep us small, keep us from shining or showing up fully. I think in that moment for me, it was like, oh my God, it all just kind of came to a head. And looking back on that, it's really hard not to feel bad, not to feel guilty for putting such gigantic expectations on myself, because I know that must have been completely traumatizing for my kids to witness. To see their mom on the floor that way, screaming like a lunatic. And, it's taken me a lot of years, and I'm really good at it now, but it took me a long time to get here, to learn how to forgive myself when I flipped my lid and have compassion for myself, instead of say, I can't believe I said this to my kid, or I can't believe I did this in that heated moment, or in that moment where I was offline. So I think, it's something that is really important to talk about, because as moms, we're not perfect. And as highly sensitive or empathic moms, we're feeling so much all the time. And so it's easy for us to, if we're not really in control of our energy, or knowing how to manage our energy, or understanding how our autonomic nervous system works, like we don't have all of that awareness, it can be really hard, because then we're just finding ourselves screaming at our kids, getting out of control, and then feeling bad about it.
Mm-hmm.
And being in shame, which is another HSP shadow, is shame. So it's so important over time to learn the skill of knowing that you're not perfect, you're human, you're going to screw up, you're going to make mistakes. B, you're not a bad mom when you flip your lid at your kids, because a lot of times it's because of your nervous system that you go to that hyperarousal place so quickly. And it's learning, right? Like how to forgive ourselves and how to let go of feeling like we've screwed up our kids, we've scarred our kids, we've traumatized our kids. Yeah. So we're going deep today, Jen.
Yes, we are. But this is so needed. Like you said, this conversation is so real. I mean, especially for people like us, because we feel so deeply, and then that guilt can really get in the way of us, showing up for ourselves in really big ways. And I can relate to so much of what you said. I know, like personally, my story, because I got depressed. I just wasn't showing up in ways that my kids deserved, and I had to release so much guilt around the way that affected them, because they witnessed me in a really dark space. And I gotta say, like, when you're in it, especially freshly afterwards, that talking like about this it seems so foreign. It seems so out of reach. Like, how on earth am I going to forgive myself for this? How am I going to be able to, let go of this and be okay with what happened? But as time goes on and you see the way that things happen, for your children, it's amazing how you're able to kind of step outside of it and see how that it actually contributed to their journey in a positive way. And I think that, like, framing it and having the patience to be able to frame it that way is key, because I know I'm very impatient with my feelings. Like, when I get stuck in a feeling, I just want it to go away. And having the patience to let it run its course, and then step outside of the situation and look back on it and see, wow, my kids learned a lot of things about compassion and empathy. And they also learned, how to help people, or things like that. It's really important to be able to not just get stuck in, wow, look at all this dark, sad, awful stuff that happened, scary, whatever. and move into, there is another side of this. And when the key too, I think, is that if they see us learning how to forgive ourselves, learning how to take our power and use it in positive ways, modeling that is key, because then they're able to forgive us and they are able to forgive themselves when they make mistakes and when they do things that aren't aligned with the best case scenario. So the importance of us learning how to forgive ourselves and model that to our kids is like priceless, because that is probably a huge part of the cycle that hasn't been broken in the past.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. So when I think about mom guilt, like on a surface level, it's like we feel bad because, we're going out for the night, leaving the kids at home, or like the typical mom guilt, like the mom guilt that I'm talking about, that we're talking about, is like the deeper, holy shit, we have like the bigger perspective on all of it. Like we can see our patterns, we can see how it's affecting our children. We can literally see in real time over the years, like, because at that time in my life, I was not capable yet of regulating my feelings and my nervous system. I can see now that I didn't have the tools yet. And I think as HSPs, we are able to step above a situation and like take that bird's eye view. That's one of our gifts. Like we're really good at taking a bird's eye view of things. And so it's kind of one of those, like you said, it's like, it could be like a blessing, but it also could be a curse. And it's how you choose to frame it. Because man, we could really drive ourselves crazy as very sensitive souls, looking at all the times that we this or that or the other thing. And then we see how our kids have been impacted by that. And it's not just a good thing. Like I have to say, like we could frame it in the positive, but there's also some sadness that I own when I look back and I say, like, I'm really sad that that happened that way. Like, yes, my kids are learning way more now about resilience and that people aren't perfect and it's okay to make mistakes. But that's that yin and yang of like, you know, it's like the blessing of it, but it's also the tragedy of it all,
Yeah.
and like holding both space for both of those, but not letting the sad part about when you maybe look back to when you flipped out as a mom and you said something to your kid that really affected them or whatnot. Like, I lost my train of thought. What was I just saying? Sorry, I lost my thoughts.
Well, I think that you're like kind of gearing even towards just showing a little, like some sort of remorse for it, like really owning
Yes.
it and showing some remorse, like, genuinely telling your children, I'm deeply sorry for that. And I just didn't have the tools and support that I needed. And that's why I handled it that way. But now that I know better, I can do better. And as
Yeah.
we do that for ourselves, we're able to put the right tools and support in place for them as well. But if we don't do that for ourselves, how are we going to do that for them? Right?
I think the conversation's so important. Like we have to be able to
Yes.
say those things to our kids because we can easily fall into the shadow of shame
Yeah.
and feel really bad. And then when we're in the shame, we shut down and we can't even say, I'm really sorry that I did this because we're so stuck in the shame. We're so like paralyzed at that point.
Yeah.
So it's having the courage, right, to own that we're not perfect. We're going to screw up. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to say things we regret. We're going to do things we regret because we're merely human. And being able to talk to our kids about it, I think that's like everything. And to me, that's breaking the generational patterns that I think a lot of us inherited, where our parents didn't talk to us about that kind of stuff for the most part. It was just all, it wasn't spoken of. We just didn't
Right.
talk about it, just move on like it never happened. And that's the worst thing. That's the biggest trauma, is not talking about it after. So learning the language of, I'm not perfect, I'm going to screw up, I'm an imperfect mom. I say that to my kids all the time. Like, I messed up today, I'm sure 100 times, and I'm sure I'll do it again tomorrow. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. I love you. Right. Like learning how to talk about it and stay in the light with it and not fall into the shadow of that shame. It gives your home then and your family and the dynamics in your home a sense of safety to be able to talk about when we've screwed up or made a mistake or flipped our lid or whatever. It makes it safe to talk about. And that, I think, automatically then once you've said it and you vocalize it, then you feel better and you feel like, okay, someone's hearing me and now I can allow myself to forgive myself and maybe accept forgiveness from someone else.
Yeah,
So
and I think our kids deserve that level of respect. You know, it's always framed in like they need to respect us, but we need to give them respect too. And communicating openly about when we make mistakes and owning that and apologizing to them in an authentic way is showing them respect. I think they deserve that, but that's my opinion.
yeah, yeah, that's a real conscious parenting, paradigm. It's like what's not, top down and parent heavy. It's, collaborative and,
Yes.
our kids are, on the same level as us. They really
Yes.
are. Yeah. I think it is respectful too, but I think for a lot of empaths, we have a lot of unhealed trauma. We really do. And so it really is a stretch to break that pattern and to try a new way of handling a situation like that when it was modeled to us
Mm,
that we don't talk about that stuff. It just
yeah.
gets buried. So, you know, for us, we've done so much work, capital W work on ourselves, that we're at that place now where it's not that difficult to have that conversation with our kids. But I imagine that when you're in the beginning of all this and you're on your path to healing, that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it can feel very emotional for a lot of people when they get to that place. But I think there's something very cathartic about allowing yourself to feel that and bringing it again into the light, not keeping it quiet inside when you're feeling shame about your bad mom moments or your hashtag mom failures. Because,
And we're
they're
also,
going to happen.
I mean, we're taught that we're supposed to be so strong all the time, and we're not allowed to let them see that vulnerable side of us because it's weak. And I think that's all bullshit. I mean, I just think they need to see the human experience in their mother. And they need to know that struggle is a part of that. Challenges are a part of that. You don't just pretend everything is easy and fun. Like, that's not the human experience.
Mm,
So setting them up for the real world, to me, is being vulnerable with them, is showing them your emotions. That's gonna, give them tools in the real world to feel like this is normal, that I feel this way. I'm not supposed to pretend everything's great all the time.
yeah, absolutely. That's so powerful. One of the things that I've noticed I've done differently as a mom is, back in the day when one of my children were in pain or suffering or having just upset about something, it would be that immediate, I got to fix it. I got to fix it. I got to help them. I got to heal them. I got to rescue them. I got to figure it out. What's wrong with you? How can I help you? What can I do to help? Right.
Mm.
You want to just help and heal and fix and rescue. And again, it's like that double-edged sword. It's because we truly love and care about our children and we hate to see them suffering. And when they're out of suffering, we're out of suffering. So we have to fix them because then it makes us feel better, right? It's that double-edged sword of like, who are we really helping here? But I've started to allow for my kids to be in the muck or the dark without trying to fix it. So my daughter especially has been exhibiting, more times where she's just feeling crappy, or she's just feeling a lot and she's not really sure like what's bothering her. And I'll notice when her energy, goes there, and I'll just say like, is everything okay? And she'll be like, I'm just feeling really heavy right now. She has those words now, which I think is amazing, right? She can say to me like, I'm just feeling really heavy I just feel really heavy right now. And I know exactly what she means. And instead of okay, let's talk about it. Well, what happened at school today? Did you have issues with your friends? How was your math test? And trying to like overanalyze and overthink why she's in that state. I just let go now and I let her just be there. And I just put my arms around her and I said, give me a hug. Like, let me hold you. Can I hold you? And then she leans into me and I just, I stroke her and I kiss her head and I just allow the discomfort. And this is part of the healing work that I've been doing. And you get to that place where your bandwidth for being able to tolerate distress in the people around you, the bandwidth expands and stretches more and more. And you can actually tolerate being in a distressing situation with someone that you love without the need to fix.
Yeah, I
So
think anger is really big on this one too, right? Because we are all taught anger is not a welcome emotion. You just avoid it, right? So for me, like my little guy, he's 6 and he's a highly sensitive and he is explosive and he has angry episodes. And my approach is to let him have it. Let him have his anger. Let him yell whatever he needs to get out. But man, does that make everybody else in my house uncomfortable. Like, you're just going to let him do that? And it's like, he's angry. He needs to get it out. And when you allow him to just scream, a few minutes later, he comes back and he says, I'm really sorry. I lost my temper. And I'm like, it's okay, buddy. We all get angry, right? But it took me 4 kids to figure out how to do that. Trust me, I did not do that with my other 3.
I love it.
Yes. And anger's a tough one. I know people who even have like centers in their home that are geared just for like an angry corner. And they allow their kids to go sit with like pool noodles and like beanbag chairs and just hit. I mean, having a safe space, whatever that looks like, I don't know. But I think that it is important to recognize that anger is a part of the human experience too. And our kids are allowed to get angry.
And so we are allowed to get angry.
So are we.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So yesterday, my son came home from school and he was having a really big craving for a specific food. And I was very upfront about like, sorry, we're not getting that today. Like we can't have that. He's highly sensitive. And I know he works really hard during the school day to keep his shit together. He's an excellent student. He loves to please his teachers. He cares so much about what everyone thinks of him. He's a really bright and sensitive young boy. And it takes a lot for him, I would imagine, to just get through a day being as highly sensitive as he is. So he came home and he tends to come home and like he really needs to decompress like right now. Like the second he walks through the door, it's like, don't ask him questions, just give him some food and let him decompress. Because again, he's just worked so hard to like keep it all together because he doesn't want to have a meltdown in school or say, these lights are too bright in this classroom, teacher, can you turn the fluorescents down? Or in the cafeteria, all the noise, right? Like when you think back to your experiences as a kid going through school as a highly sensitive person or an empath, isn't it like amazing how resilient we were to be able to like face all the, if you had a public school education, I guess, and you were in a big school, all the stimulation every single day, right? So he came home and he was like, I really want to have whatever, the food. And I was like, we're not getting that today. And he lost his shit. He just lost his shit. He was really angry. And Emma had come home as well, obviously off the bus. So I was sitting with her. We were going over homework and just connecting on the day. And I worked really hard to just stay in a bubble of calmness. And I let him have his tantrum. And he got really fucking mad, like really mad at one point. And this is where I think it's important for us to like say there has to be boundaries.
Agreed.
Like he took the pantry door and he slammed it really hard because I guess he was looking for some other kind of a food, but like nothing was going to satisfy because I was saying no to the thing he wanted. And he slammed the door really hard and like the whiteboard on our pantry door like fell to the ground. We have wood floors. And so I was like, oh God, I hope it didn't ding the floor. And at that point, and he'd been carrying on for a while, but I was just really calm, letting him do his thing. Because he was offline, right? Like that's the thing I think we have to recognize is like he was just offline at that moment. And I was just waiting for this, for it to pass and him to come back down. But my husband, who was working in his office, when he heard the whiteboard fall, he was like, that's it. I can't take this anymore. So he flipped his lid and he came into the kitchen and I was like, damn, because Emmett and I were just calm and relaxed and creating that sense of safety. Okay, feel your anger over there. It's okay. We're not going to like stop you. We're not going to say you can't. But once that whiteboard hit the floor, Brian came in and he was just like, he had to get involved. And it was just interesting. It was interesting to witness, like in my family with all of us being highly sensitive. And I got to out my husband, who I always thought was an 80%er. He's becoming more sensitive. I swear to God, by like through osmosis and being around all of us, it's like he's becoming more and more sensitive. So it's like, who's going to flip first? Someone's flipped their lid. Who's going to react first? Who else is going to go into like that hyper arousal? And I was like, yeah, me and Emma got to like be calm through it. But then Brian got sucked into it. But he did such a good job. Like I have to give so much mad kudos to my husband because he handled it so well. And he actually ended up giving Jake, what he needed, not the food, just like the assurance and the safety that he needed to come back down and to, breathe deeply. And then he apologized. I'm so sorry that I did that. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I expressed my anger that way. Not I'm sorry for being angry, but I'm sorry I slammed the door. And that's important.
Agreed.
Never have to apologize for getting angry. And he said it again at night when we were when I was about to tuck him in, he said, I'm really sorry again for getting angry. And I said, no. I said, you don't have to apologize for getting angry. But yeah, next time don't slam the door like that because that's not okay, right? Which brings us back to what you just said, like having a safe place in your home for your kids to embody their anger. So one of the practices I learned at Mastery that I do with a lot of my women in my community now is we do these swamp parties, and in a swamp we put on the angry music, and you can take like Nerf bats and hit like at the floor or hit a wall if you're in a place where that's okay. Ripping up magazines or newspaper can be really a good feeling when you're feeling angry and you want to rip something up. So like an old magazine, you can rip that. My personal favorite is dish towels. You take a dish towel and you bang it on the couch, or you can bang it on the floor or at the wall. And I think the thing that would be really powerful is as we start to use these tools to express our own anger, doing it with our kids. Because like I've asked Emma before, like, do you need to go downstairs and hit some pillows or something?
Yeah.
And she never wants to go. She never says yes to that.
Yeah.
But I think if I said to her, I'll go downstairs with you and we'll hit pillows together.
Yeah.
We'll rip up magazines together. She'd be all over it. So it could be a fun little experiment. Like if you want to create that place for your kids in your home, like where can they go when they're feeling angry? Do it with them.
Agreed.
Because that might be scary to do on your own. And the kids might not know, like, how do I do that? What does that look like? It's so nice to model it. But I think that's such a genius idea, is to have the ability to create the safety for our kids and ourselves to feel those quote unquote dark emotions. But emotions aren't, as we know, good or bad. They're just energy moving through us. Yeah. And they're cues and clues. Yeah, for sure.
And that anger that we're all feeling, that even brings us back to guilt, right? Because we're angry with ourselves. And when we're angry with ourselves, it's important that we honor that and we release it somewhere. So having that outlet for your anger, I think, is so important. And it's not something we're taught. It's like, it's just not welcome. And it's something that you have to, for yourself, go find, like, what's going to work for you, what's going to make you feel a sense of release. I definitely think some sort of movement in your body, shaking it out, yelling, and doing that in a place where you feel safe to do it. That's key too. So that can be tough. Like me, I'm lucky I got a few acres. I can go back in my woods and scream my brains out if I want.
That's so good. Yeah, I'd look like a lunatic screaming my brains out in the park that's nearby. But I have done like walks where I punch as I walk. I like punch and I kind of like mutter under my breath. I've done that. I must look like a lunatic, but I don't even care. When I need to do it, I do it. I have a lot of clients who go in their car. They go in
Oh,
their
I
car.
definitely do that too. And I put on heavy metal and I scream the words at the top of my lungs.
Yeah, heavy metal's so good for that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think suppressed anger can really mess with us when it comes to guilt.
yeah, and a lot of people, stuff it down. They snuff down that anger. They snuff it down. They stuff it down. And that leads to, a whole other slew of issues. Absolutely. It leads to depression. It leads
Yeah.
to shut down. Um, in my trauma class, we're learning about like how some people ricochet from like the fight response, anger, wanting to, punch, 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 and then they can ricochet down to shut down. And then they can ricochet again up to, so it's interesting, and there's no right or wrong, just we're all different in how we how our nervous systems are wired, how we work. So you might find that your pattern is to stuff down your anger, and then you might feel sad and stuck and paralyzed and depressed and disconnected. Or you might find yourself fighting, yelling, screaming, running away, getting in the car and just taking it. Like, so notice, I think it's really important to notice when we're in that state, and it's more than just a little anger. It's actually like we're in like trauma response. We're in like that hyper arousal or hypoarousal. And what we really need is a sense of safety to be able to come back, to come down. So these practices are really great for, yeah, giving ourselves permission, to feel what we need to, and hitting those dish towels is a really great way to let all that stuff out, and then become, come back into that optimal energy state where we're, able to function, in a more healthy way.
I think like all this even ties into like yelling, right? Like I know a lot of moms that like, I used to be a big time yeller. Because that's what's happening, right? Is that we're just stuffing it down and stuffing it down and stuffing it down. And then our kid does something to trigger us and we just explode and
It's
we
a
yell at
volcano.
them. And then
Mhm.
we feel guilt. We're like, oh my God, I can't believe I lost my shit like that on my kid. I just yelled at them, right? And it's this vicious circle. So I
Yeah.
think everything we just talked about is perfect for the mom that's the yeller, because she's just not aware of what's going on inside of her and why she gets to the point where she's yelling at her children. It's being aware of, oh wow, like I just keep ignoring things that are making me angry, and then I end up lashing out at my kid. Let me find a healthy place to put this anger. Let me honor that I'm angry about these things and I'm allowed to be angry about them. And let me find a place to put that anger so that it doesn't get directed at my kid. And then I don't feel guilty.
Mhm. Yeah. And even when you have the awareness, you still sometimes yell at
Oh,
your kid.
sure. Oh,
I just want to say that too.
oh yeah, yeah.
We
No, for
still can do
sure.
it. Yeah. Yeah. But
It
then
gets
it's
it gets
okay,
less,
forgive
but
yourself. Forgive
we're keeping
yourself. Forgive yourself.
it. Yes.
I think I might have mentioned this on a different episode, but I was practicing every night before I went to bed. I would say 3 things that I was really proud of myself for before I'd go to bed. Like 3 brags or 3 celebrations or 3 things I felt really good about, as a mom. And that was a really awesome practice that I did for a while. Because again, it's so easy to lay your head on the pillow and then it's like you see that list come up in your mind of like all the moments of the day, like you wish you could have done differently, or things you're feeling bad about, because we feel that all so deeply. And when we're still at night and the kids are in bed and we have that time to just kind of like, oh, it all kind of catches up to us, that's when it can be the hardest, because it's like I
Mhm.
feel myself like kind of going through the day and certain things will like be sticking out, like, oh, what happened at noon? What did I do? What did I say? Oh my God, I can't believe that happened, right? That's for me when that stuff happens. It's like when I'm finally in stillness and no one needs me and I have no responsibilities and I can kind of go within. That's when it's so important to be like, what did I do that was really good today as a mom?
Oh,
How
that's
did I
so
show up for my kids today?
advice. It really is. It is life changing. If you can change that cycle in your life of going at the end of the night, down the list of all the things that you did wrong and how you failed, and shifting that narrative to what did I do good? Let me think about all the beautiful moments that happened today and all the ways I excelled as a mom. We have the ability to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the excelling, it's like, it's the small things. It's all just the small things, right? Just, oh, I was present.
Yeah.
When my kid came home, I wasn't on my phone. I actually put it down and I greeted them and I saw them and looked them in the eyes and I said, I'm really glad you're home. I missed you today, right? To me, that's like, awesome. Mom win, right? Just being present. To me, it's the presence. The more present we can be for our children, like that to me is the sign of, okay, it was a good day. Was I present for my kids? Was I able to stay connected to myself, so much so that I could connect to them?
100%.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a beautiful note to end on, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're all striving for, to just be present and aligned with what feels good for us, and that way we can show up for our kids and let go of all that guilt and be present with them. That's the biggest gift that we can give ourselves and them.
And I always say, like, just think of one thing that makes you feel good as a mom. One thing every day. Do one thing for yourself. One thing. Because when we abandon ourselves in all the responsibility of being a parent, when we lose that connection to ourselves, right? It's like our stories.
Yeah.
That's when it's so hard to stay present, because we're abandoning ourselves. So just do one thing every day, whether it's like a little dance break for 5 minutes between work calls, or it's a quick walk outside, or 5 minutes of yoga, or just stretching, or making yourself a healthy meal. Just one thing every day can make a really, really big difference in how your day goes. Yeah. All right, my friend, I love you. I'm excited to be back again next week. So we're going to post this video in our Facebook group if anyone is interested in watching us. We're going to be doing some new things also in that group. We have, I think, almost 40 people already in our Facebook group for our podcast, which is so exciting.
Yes, join us if you haven't already.
Yeah, we want to know who you all are. We want to meet you and continue to support you and hear back from you. So please join us there. Okay, I love you. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Bye, everyone.